In the early 16th century, the Catholic Church was a major power, holding a third of Europe's land and having significant influence on all rulers. Its power was unfathomable, and most believed in its righteous divinity. Martin Luther, a priest, saw corruption in the church, with his peers being lethargic in their duties and publicly scoffing at biblical doctrine. Luther had the idea of sola fide, which was Latin for only faith. His idea brought him into conflict with the church, and in response, Luther famously nailed his 95 Theses against the door of the church on October 31st, 1517. That, or he mailed them to the Archbishop. We don't know, but what we do know is that he certainly didn't nail them to the Archbishop. This is how the Protestant Reformation began, and Luther claimed that church rituals were meaningless, their preachings false, and that priesthood was merely a man-made invention. Luther was made to defend himself before the famously Habsburg George Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. Charles dismissed him as just a single friar. This pushed Luther to take the revolutionary step of mass printing the Bible in German, whereas it had only been previously available in Latin, which only priests could read. Now everyone could read the Bible and come up with their own ideas and beliefs, and no Catholic church was going to tell them otherwise. A new schism had occurred amongst Western Christianity comparable to that of the East-West Schism of 1054. You suddenly had Lutherans, Calvinists, Anabaptists, and more, not to mention these sects had their own sects like Crypto-Calvinists, French Calvinists, it goes on and on. Every one of these denominations thought they knew the one true way and that all others were going to hell, so you could see how the seeds of conflict had been laid. In 1524, due to recent bad harvests in Württemberg, the serfs were on strike. 1,200 peasants gathered in protest and formed the 12 Articles, and their arguments were quite similar in vein to those of Luther's, claiming that serfdom was a man-made construct and was incompatible with the doctrine of the Bible. Other demands/points in the 12 Articles were the peasants should elect the clergyman and that all of their taxes should be available for public purposes and not for the Catholic Church. Luther, of course, supported them. Wait, sorry, I read that wrong. Luther condemned them and sided with the nobility, even saying that peasants should be killed like mad dogs. The peasants revolted in Thurzach, Lippe, Memmingen, and even further off places like Forchheim and Mühlhausen, refusing to pay tax and attempting to destroy serfdom. In April 1525, 5,000 peasants dined the Leipheimer Hofen, which literally means the Lipen bunch, gathered near Lippen to prepare their capture of They grouped up with the local peasants, which numbered 1,200. They began to attack the city when Jörg Drusus von Waldburg, known as the Scourge of the Peasants, entered with an army of 8,500 and 18 field guns. Drusus led the Swabian League, an established peacekeeping association of the imperial estates, whose sole objective at the time was to strike down the peasant insurgency. The peasants, upon witnessing the sheer size of his army, attempted an orderly retreat, but Drusus set his cavalry upon the fleeing peasants. This was known as the Battle of Lippen, creative name I know, and was a victory for Drusus. The war witnessed multiple massacres enacted from both sides. One such massacre was the Weinsberg massacre, where in mid-April, peasants under the leadership of little Jack Rohrbach took revenge against the nobility. That was followed by the massacre at Frankenhausen, in which on the 29th of April the peasants rose up but were intimidated by a force of 6,000 Landsknechts into a truce, which the Landsknechts immediately then broke and massacred the peasants, leading to the burning of Jack Rohrbach. The peasants attempted to strike down Drusus and his Swabian League, but always failed to defeat him. In a barristling in one battle, the Battle of Königshofen, which occurred on the 2nd of June 1525, 500 peasants had feigned death to avoid being killed by his league. The battle which had the greatest loss of life was the Battle of Weblingen on the 12th of May 1525. When the peasants discovered Drusus had pitched camp at Rottenburg, they made their way towards him, capturing the city of Herrenberg in their advance. Due to the cavalry maneuvers of the Swabian League, they were able to strike down anywhere from 2,000 to 9,000 of the peasants and retake the city. With the exception of the siege of Freiburg and Brexau, largely all battles resulted in a peasant defeat. By the closing stages of the war, the peasants had lost over 100,000 of their 300,000 men. The rebellion had ultimately failed, and separate peace treaties were made with the peasants, all quite harsh. This war had been inspired by an earlier revolt, the Knights' Revolt of 1522, and just like that one had failed as well. Drusus was accredited the victory by the Emperor, and the Swabian League received much acclaim. The German Peasants' War, or Revolt, was the largest revolution in Europe prior to the French Revolution, and it was a turning point of the religious and political landscape of the West. It was only the beginning of future wars based on the conflicts of Protestants and Catholics, and peasantry and nobility. If you want to see more about these wars, and more specifically the climax, check out my channel, Future History, for the 30 Years' War. I'd also like to thank Jabsy for hosting me on his channel, and I hope you all enjoyed the video.